Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what part of the world you're coming in from. I think folks are still just joining in on the meeting. Peter Carson here from Envision IT and Stephen Rice from Microsoft. We'll get into intros and main session in a minute once we get everybody going. Full disclosure, this is our first Teams webinar that we're doing rather than a Teams meeting. So we may have a few finicky things as we're going, but we'll wing it and see how it goes. I'm just glad that people are actually coming in from the lobby and able to join the session. So Kevin, you give me the go-ahead when you feel we've got folks in and we're ready to get started.
I think we're good to go.
Okay, very good. Right, so let's jump right into sort of intro of the session and then intro of myself, and I'll let Stephen introduce himself as well. So the topic is Hero Links, which is a new feature Stephen's going to talk about from Microsoft, external sharing and governance in Microsoft 365. It's a lot to get through. I have a habit of trying to pack too much content in. I've got way too many slides, so I'm actually going to do some demos and skip a lot of the slides. The nice thing is that we do publish the slides up, so you'll have access to them and be able to get the background material that's part of them. But let me start with myself. I'm the president, founder of Envision IT. We're a Canadian-based Microsoft partner, been a partner for many, many years, MVP for a lot of years. I'm actually in Paris right now. I was in Dublin last week for the European SharePoint conference, and like to get out and speak at different events and things like that. So I thought, well, I'm just going to hang in Europe and do the webinar from here. I'm in my son's apartment in downtown Paris, and apparently he has fiber and the connectivity is good. So cross my fingers, everything will work out just fine. And by the way, he does have a fireplace just behind me here, although it's a more than 100-year-old apartment building. I don't think they use the fireplaces anymore. I won't have a true fireside chat with Stephen. Stephen, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Hi, everyone. My name is Stephen Rice. I'm a principal product manager on the OneDrive and SharePoint team. I've been on the team since 2014, I believe, is actually when I first met Peter as well. For our purposes today, I own our sharing platform and experiences and have been kind of the driving person behind our new Hero Links experience, which you may have heard about. And if not, I'm looking forward to talk about today. You can also find me on the official OneDrive podcast Sync Up. And I think, yep, Peter got the link there as well. And yeah, looking forward to talk to you all today about what we've got coming down the line.
Very good. Thanks, Stephen. And yeah, we are recording the session as well. So you'll be able to get both the deck with the links and the recordings from there. This is kind of a leftover from when we used Teams meetings. I don't think folks can actually come off mic and camera in a webinar, but in any case, we will try and keep an eye on the Q&A. Steve and I may be busy chatting, but we've got a few Envision IT folks on the line here. They can poke in at appropriate times if it makes sense to address a question that come up, or we'll try and keep a few minutes at the end to answer questions from there as well. So welcome, everybody. Hope you enjoy and learn something new here. So a couple of key takeaways just before we dive into things. So Stephen actually didn't qualify this. It is Q2, right? It's March, yep. April timeframe that you're targeting?
Yeah, April is our official roadmap date right now. And of course, we'll update with more specifics as it gets closer. That's about where we're aiming for.
Cool. So yeah, simpler, more flexible Hero Links we're going to hear about in a minute are coming around Q2 next year. But B2B sharing, which is the sort of Enter ID, external identity, it's changed name a few times through there, is more than just sharing links as well. And we're going to talk about what that looks like from a broader perspective. And I think a really important point that bears in mind both in what Stephen's group is doing from a link sharing point of view and what we're doing with the more structured sharing. It's important to remember that Microsoft 365, Enter ID, and Purview together make a really powerful and a really secure sharing solution. A lot of folks I've talked to, their IT administrators or their CISOs say, hey, we just turn sharing off because we're worried about it, and we're worried about lack of security around it. The reality is they're not stopping sharing. They're just pushing it into the shadows with shadow IT and email attachments and things like that, which are terrible ways to share things. So, if you are not the global admin in your tenant and you learn something interesting here today about why sharing should happen and you can't, by all means share this deck with your CISO or your security officer and have that conversation, because I think it makes a ton of sense from that point of view. Stephen, your thoughts there?
Helps if I unmute. Yeah, it is critical to have a coherent story about how you want to approach sharing. It's not just about understanding how to keep things locked down or Yeah, I'm blanking on the words. You want to make sure you've got a whole story from what you're attempting to accomplish, what your IT team needs to protect, what your business is, and approach it with that strategy in mind to make sure you're able to achieve your business goals without causing any problems.
Yeah, and that's the key is make it easy for the business, but make it secure for the business as well. If you can achieve those two goals, which often seem conflicting, but they don't have to be, you've had a success on your hands from that perspective. So from an agenda point of view, I'm going to do a couple more slides, and then I'm going to hand it over to Stephen to talk about what Hero Links actually are. We're going to talk about our Envision IT tenant dashboard for Microsoft 365 that gives you some visibility into maybe where links have been used in the past and how you might want to clean those up. Dive into data rooms, which is a feature we have in our Extranet User Manager product. I did a much deeper session in my last webinar on Microsoft Purview and external sharing, but I want to touch on it a bit because it's really important. The sensitivity, the labeling is a key part of your sharing strategy, or it should be as well. So we'll touch on that as well. And then we'll wrap up and do some Q&A from there. So evolution of file sharing, yeah, it's been more than 10 years now, Stephen, that sharing links have been there. So before that, there was email attachments, which drove me nuts. I mean, I hate the idea of people using their inbox as their document storage solution. It's just not the right way to work, whether you're internal or external. But we got into cloud sharing and different URLs, permissions and such from there. And then really what you're going to be talking about is how that gets consolidated down into Hero Links, and I'll chat more about our data room side of things. I would like to take a minute to talk about this dialogue. I mean, it's gone through a lot of changes over the years, and there's continued changes to it as part of that. Actually, where the conversation between you and I started, Stephen, was around that only people with existing access. It's driven me nuts for ages that couldn't be set as a tenant default. Because generally, when I want to just copy a link to put it into a Teams message to somebody, I don't want to change the permissions. I just want the link, and you can only set that sort of site by site. And you had shared some things in PNP Core that could maybe address that. It was a little rough around the edges, so I don't know if that's the right approach from that point of view. But really, that is sort of the starting point, isn't it, for the Hero Link as well? It's kind of, here's the link, and we haven't changed anything until you start adding people to it.
Yeah, it was really born out of, like, actually, if you go back one slide here, there's a fun kind of story here as well. If you look at the kind of these three generations, generation one, the reason we built generation two in the first place is because so many people would, get a very basic permission link in SharePoint. I create a file, I share it with Peter. Peter does the thing everyone does. Oh, I really need Karen to access this file. And he hits reply all, adds Karen. Karen clicks on it, gets an access denied. And so we started building these sharing links because we needed a way to create permissions that could travel with the email. And over time, we've actually done a bunch of work with Outlook, with Teams, so that they can understand if people have access to documents, and if they don't have access, to prompt the user to fix it in the moment. And that is really what unlocks the ability to do things like this kind of Generation 3 Hero Link, or even the people with existing access link, because now we actually know who has access, and we can interrupt the user when it may not work. As the system has gotten more mature, it's let us move to these more kind of secure defaults because we know and can ensure that access occurs in the moment when it's supposed to happen at the right times.
Actually, I love some of the things that the Outlook team has done. Like when I drag a document out of my OneDrive folder in to attach it to an email, it says, hey, do you want to actually attach it, or should we just create a link for this? And no, not everybody has access. Do you want to grant them access to it? So it does, help a lot from a user experience point of view to sort of coach people through from that perspective. The anyone link's gotten a little bit of grief lately. I mean, it scared a lot of people, this idea that you're granting everybody in the world access to your document by generating one of these anyone links. I guess the thing for people to remember there is it's not like it has opened it up to the entire world. Like somebody has to have that link to be able to access it. You've made a key that's free to duplicate and pass around, but you still need the key to get in, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you use attachments today, there's no reason you shouldn't be comfortable with using anyone links. It is our equivalent of a classic email attachment. It works for anyone in the world. I can forward an email to anyone. The link will work in the same way. The only thing is within anyone link, you get revocation ability. So if I send Peter an email attachment, that document is gone. I have no control over it whatsoever. My policy is gone. If I send him an anyone link, my company policy still applies, and I can revoke his access at a later date if needed. So if you're comfortable with attachments, there's no reason to not be comfortable with anyone links. And if you're not comfortable with attachments, which many customers aren't for many, many reasons, then we have all these other more secure link types and defaults available for you.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that there's more options underneath this, like the anyone link. I could create a view or a view no download link, and that's way more secure than the email attachment. So yes,
even more so.
I like using that corollary. Hey, if you're cool with an attachment, you're definitely cool with anyone. The people in Envision IT, I kind of think of that as an anyone link, except it has to be in your company. It's the same sort of idea. You're not granting permissions to that document to that person. You're passing around a key that only works for people that work for your company, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then the people you choose. I mean, that's obviously the finer grain where you can pick exactly who you want to share it to. Yeah.
Yep.
Now,
exactly.
Microsoft's pushing away from the anyone links. They really want everybody to be identified and be an actual B2B guest user as part of that. There were some changes around July this year related to that. I was trying to unwind it through Copilot yesterday as I was prepping for I just ended up in this circular confusing loop around that if you've enabled full B2B integration, then you don't have any more anyone links, but really the way you enable it is to turn off anyone links. So it seemed kind of redundant, but I don't know, Stephen, do you have more to say on that?
So there is a change coming down the line around the B2B integration. I don't think it has anything to do with anyone links, although I'll have to double check with the folks on my team that are driving that more specifically.
Okay.
This is part of and we've talked about this at conferences before. Increasingly, we're moving people towards Entra B2B as the kind of the identity platform of choice. Traditionally, we've had what we call SharePoint one-time passcode, which you would get in that kind of people you choose option, which is a SharePoint built identity. It only exists inside of the SharePoint ecosystem. And we're moving folks towards Entra B2B as our default.
Right.
I think there should be more coming on that in the next couple of months as well.
Yeah, I guess the thing was that, your team actually started building the sharing links before Entra B2B was really mature enough to start leveraging it. You were kind of running in parallel, and it's now coming together, which is good to see. So why don't I hand it over to you here, Stephen, and take it away. Tell us more about what hero links are.
Yeah, let me just grab control here.
There you go.
Oh, that did not work. Okay, let me share my screen, and we'll approach it from that side. I did not see anything changing on my side. Is it changing for you, Peter?
It still says that I'm sharing. Do I need to stop first?
Let me try this. Something odd is going on with my computer this morning, apparently. There we go.
Got it. Okay. Full credit for you, Stephen. We kind of dropped you off of the calendar invite. You thought it was 11 a.m. Pacific, not 8 a.m. Pacific, so it was a bit of a scramble.
Oh, it's okay. We had some fun this morning. Unfortunately, in true conference experiences, my demo environment broke this morning, so I'm gonna have to go off of a video instead of a live demo. But that's why it's April and not tomorrow. Okay, so OneDrive is the heart of collaboration for Microsoft 365, OneDrive and SharePoint. And we look to kind of enable these three different pillars when it comes to collaboration. One is making sure that collaboration is seamless. Anytime it breaks you out of your flow, it breaks you out of the work you're trying to get done, that means we're failing at our job and we need to be doing better. The second step is collaboration, while critical to making sure that you can get your job done, it has to be secure. And as the environment around us has shifted, so too does the sharing experience have to shift. And that's kind of what Peter and I were just talking about a moment ago with the various defaults and things like that. And the third is that collaboration is all about making sure that your team is aligned and able to work together. So when it comes to OneDrive, there are currently 64 applications today that have our sharing experience integrated. Yeah, it is always larger than I think. And I think we're doing some, fun math where, OneDrive, on iOS versus Android count as different applications. So there are different flavors of the same thing, but it is a integrated far and wide. One of the first big projects that I got to work on at Microsoft was unifying our sharing experience across the board. And the real power of that was that when you add a new policy, it meant we didn't have to write the same code or error messaging or user guides 64 different times. You write it once and it shows up across all those different endpoints.
It's also wonderful for the users to see the same experience on all their different devices and apps too.
Exactly. So then we have, there are about 1.2 billion files shared per month, which is absolutely massive. It is one of the most used features. And then, as we've been talking about, link-based sharing is now a 10-year-old experience, which is kind of insane. We started with that kind of very basic anyone link concept, then we moved into this kind of people in your organization concept, and then went further from there. But as we've been working through, as the environment around us has changed, we've gotten a lot of feedback on where people had frustrations with our new experience, where things were working, where things weren't. And that led us to build the new Hero Link sharing experience. So let me just pop up the video and I'll start taking you through it. So I've got two accounts here. On the left is my sharing user. On the right here is my, whatever you want to call it, like receiving user. And so I'm just going to pick, whatever document I've got here and open up the new share experience. So first up, this is the brand new share dialog. We've done a couple of things here to try and simplify it based on all the feedback we've been hearing. And we've really been focused on bringing all of the experience into one. So it is not just the share dialog. It is not just about copying links. It also does manage access as well, which I'll show you. So just to start with, I can click copy link. And in this case, you'll notice I got our new default link, which is a link that works for only people who've been added to the file. So in this case, this file, I guess I'm Michaela here, and it will work only for Asen and Steven. And I can come over here to my second user, who you'll notice is Jason. You'll notice Jason is not one of those people that is listed in the file. And if I paste in the link for Jason, of course, you get an access denied. Unfortunate reality. One thing that we don't have it in the video demo, unfortunately, but we have also refreshed this experience. So this page looks like it was built in, I don't know, 2010, something like that. We have a new access denied experience that is also coming down the line. And the kind of power of the Hero Link is that I can come back to the dialog. I can update it here to people in the organization with the link in view. I don't need to copy a new link. I've updated the exact same link that I've already sent. And I'll come back to Jason's view and click refresh, and it just works. So with Hero Links, your dialog, everyone gets, every file, every folder gets one link that you get to control and access. That is what we call the Hero Link. It is a super powered link, hence Hero. It's the same link as what's in the address bar, and you can update the permissions on that link as you send it around. So let me show you, even though the demo is not working, let me show you some other parts of the new experience. So this is the new dialog, like I mentioned, with a couple more people who have been added in this case. One of the cool things we've added is the ability to bulk select and update permissions as well. So I can come in here, and if I wanted to update both these people, I can update them both to edit. We'll see if this part of the demo is working today. It is. Cool. So that's just an exciting way to make it a little bit easier to update permissions. One of my other favorite features is we've added these new filters and searches. So if I wanted to see if Michaela has access, I can just type in Michaela's name and I can find her directly. You can also filter to external people. So in this case, I have one external user here, Phanindra Contoso. And one of my favorite new features, this is actually brand new. I don't think Peter's seen this one yet either. So this file inside of Microsoft, we have various confidential labels that we use. This file has actually been marked as confidential Microsoft extended, which means it works for only people inside of Microsoft. Phanindra is an external user who does not have access to the document. So previously, if I'd tried to share this file with Phanindra, he would have accessed it, attempted to open it, and then gotten that kind of label error mismatch. We now have the ability to understand what the file's label is and what impact it might have on access. So we can actually tell you, hey, this file sensitivity label is going to prevent Phanindra from accessing it. And then I can know if I need to remove Phanindra, if I should update the label, whatever it might be.
Nice.
Let's see. The other thing I will show off for you is we still want to have a story for our existing sharing links, but we've kind of reframed them as an advanced feature. So in this case, this file is fairly locked down. I can create a link for, say, Peter. So this, I'm going to be sharing this link as part of the Envision webinar. I can give the link a name, so I know what it was used for. I'll make it, oops. Ooh, my file just disappeared behind me. That's a fun bug. Oh, well, there you go. Of course, Peter is external, so it's not going to work at the moment because of the sensitivity label, but let me pick someone who's internal. I'm just going to pretend. Oh, now I'm not getting results at all. Okay, fine. There we go. So I'll share with Robert in this case. I can, of course, change the access it gives. I can give it view. I can set an expiration date on it if I want. And this lets me create an additional sharing link, so it's separate from that hero link. It also provides a backwards compatibility story so that any links that you have today will continue to work as you would expect. And yeah, it is all part of our plan to make sure that the new experience, gives you a new, simple experience out of the box, but retains all of that flexibility that you've come to know and love. I think those are the kind of big highlights for the HeroLink experience. New dialog with manage access integrated directly into it. A single HeroLink that lets you control access to the file, and then the ability to create additional links as needed for those scenarios. So I'm just going to pull up my last slide. So if you're interested in learning more about kind of the HeroLink experience, there's a blog you can read here at aka.ms/onedrive/blog/collab. That is the blog from when we announced the feature and walks through each of these pieces in a little bit more detail. You can follow the roadmap directly at that link there. The roadmap ID is 492622. It is currently marked, as Peter mentioned, as showing up in April. And we've done, OneDrive has office hours that we run once a month. You can check out a session we did specifically about HeroLinks at that HeroLink at office hours link, and then you can join us for future office hours if you want to learn more. And with that, I will turn it back over to Peter to walk through more awesome Envision content.
Cool. Thanks so much, Stephen. Yeah, I'm excited about that. I mean, a couple things there. One, the fact that by default it isn't actually changing any permissions. It's just doing that existing access and creating that link. But then the fact that that link lives on, so you can then modify, change that, put it back to the way it was at the beginning. It really doesn't matter. It's all the same link as part of that. And the idea that you can literally just go up to your browser address bar and grab the link. You don't even have to go through the sharing if you're just sending it to folks on your team that need the link but already have access because it's in the team itself. It just makes it so much easier from that point of view. Okay, let me grab wrong screen. Bear with me. I'm missing my multiple monitors here, so bear with me a sec. There we go. Okay. So yeah, let's talk a bit more about governance and external collaboration. I know governance is an overused term, but it is an important thing from how you structure your external collaboration. So part of it is, there's often a lot of old links still floating around in the environment. So as the Hero links roll out, Stephen, is there a plan from Microsoft? Will they be cleaning those up, or is that something admins should be taking care of? What's sort of your recommendations around that?
Yeah, so there's nothing specific to the new rollout that will, help you clean up links or things like that. Of course, this is part of, any good governance strategy is making sure that you're evaluating permissions on a regular basis and cleaning them up via whatever means makes sense, whether that's using things like Microsoft Graph Data Connect, audit reports, asking your users to manually check and go through things like that, or using tools like Envision Governance Manager to make sure that you've got the right things going.
For sure. Good segue. Thank you. Yeah, so we've launched out what we call the tenant dashboard for Microsoft 365. Now, it's not an all-up everything Microsoft 365. That's a massive scope. It's really focused on SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams predominantly, and sharing links are one of the things that it has in there. So let's just jump over into demo here. That our tenant dashboard works. It's a SaaS application that runs on top of Microsoft 365, and it collects metadata from your tenant and then surfaces it up back to you in a Power BI dashboard and lets you drill down, from a very high level to as deep as you want to get into even individual document permissions and links and such from there. Now I'm the one that's having demo issues. Here we go. It's coming. And what I want to focus here is on the past link, because yes, often people would have created links maybe without intending to, left them behind. some of them, like the organization links, I used to be more concerned about that from a Copilot readiness point of view. Suddenly everybody in the organization has access to whatever has been shared from an organization shared point of view, but that's actually not true. I mean, it doesn't actually change the permissions. It's just anybody who has that link that's in the organization is able to access it. But Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that if somebody had shared an organization link with me, and then I asked a Copilot question about that document, from Copilot's point of view, it's not aware that I have permissions to that document because I don't really have direct permissions to it. I only have permissions by clicking through that link. Is that a fair statement?
Almost. So the way Copilot works today is it only has access to the content that you have access to. With sharing links, we have this concept called redemption. And you can redeem on a link, which means the system knows you have access to it whenever you click on the link. And if I email you the link or if I send it to you in a Teams chat, basically inside of the Microsoft ecosystem where we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that Stephen meant for Peter to have access to this item, we also redeem you in those cases. Okay. So if I create a link and I send it to you, Copilot will be able to answer content on it because Copilot knows you have the link. If I create a link, send it to you, and then let's say Karen again is trying to access or ask Copilot questions about that document, she would not get answers that are grounded on the content because she's not clicked on that link yet or doesn't have access to it.
Okay, so that's an important distinction. So just by creating an organization link, I'm not giving everybody in the organization Copilot access to it, only people that have had that link shared with them. They need both things. Perfect. That makes a lot of sense. So what I'm looking at here is our tenant dashboard against our demo tenant. So it doesn't have a ton of content in there. There's only 5,000 documents, but I wanted to give a sense of some of the things that we see in here. I won't go through all the areas. I'm going to focus more on the sharing itself. We actually only have 17 sharing links. We usually see thousands, tens of thousands, even more in a lot of client tenants as part of that. But if I drill down into the unique permissions here, I can see what all those links are. And some of them are simply unique permissions where permissions can be broken in some spot to share things outside of sharing links versus things like anonymous edit, no download, view. So that's what I was saying before. I mean, the anyone link has a variety of different flavors depending on how you choose to share that anyone link out through there. Flexible links are ones where you're defining the specific people that you're sharing it with, and the organization edit ones are the ones we were talking about just a second ago. So I can see exactly what those are. I can see where the permission sets are and what type of workspaces those go across from there. What we're also setting up here is the ability to load this up into an Excel data model and then make decisions and say, hey, I just want to remove all 39 or 15 or 11 of those links in Vault through there. So rather than having the user go through and do that, some of the things that we think would be interesting to add into this is, what's the age of that document and when was the link shared, could have a bearing on whether that sharing link should actually still be there or not. Because often they were created sort of pre-expiration days and retain, or there wasn't an enforcement of an expiration and they just hang around forever as part of that. So how do we tidy that up? And that's a key part of what we're looking to achieve through this. Let me flip ahead here. So, what does that workflow look like? Just, obviously in a large organization, you may want to break it down by department or group or such from there and basically review with them and to say, hey, do you actually need all these? Can we tidy some of this up? Can we clean some of this up? This is something that we're seeing a lot of, particularly as clients are getting ready for Copilot, but also sort of post-COVID lockdown when everybody threw Teams out to everybody and it got to be a bit of a Wild West. How do you scale that back and sort of rein it back in again? It's part of a broader cleanup exercise that we do with a lot of our clients from that perspective. And maybe it's not a weekly, monthly, quarterly, but having some sort of cadence to say, hey, now that we've tidied our tenant up, can we circle back and review that again from there? Now let's switch gears and talk about sharing at scale. And this is where what we call our Extranet User Manager product comes in, this idea of data rooms in Microsoft 365. And data rooms is not our concept. It exists in a lot of vendor products and often involves an external SaaS solution. So, like a Box or a Dropbox or a Cisco Secure Share are all examples of data rooms. The key is they're often a separate place from where you actually do your work in Microsoft 365. And we feel pretty strongly that the solution that Stephen's team's created, that the Enter ID and security team have created, and the Purview they've built a really good solution from a security point of view. Why would you want to take your content out of that and put it into a different SaaS solution that you have to pay for again as part of that? So let's just natively keep that in Microsoft 365. There's obviously a cost savings to that because you're not paying twice for it, but there's also a pretty significant security savings to that as well. Security often talks about the attack surface, and as you make the attack surface bigger by putting it into multiple SaaS systems, you greatly increase your likelihood of having information leakage and information security issues coming out as part of that. So this is a key to that, is let's reduce that attack surface. So what is Extranet User Manager? It's a simple interface that sits on top of Entra ID from a guest management point of view. So as Stephen mentioned, the B2B guest features are sort of the core underlying identity that's being used to share externally. It's not always been that way, but it's definitely the direction, and that's what Microsoft is moving towards. And then we put a fully branded, customizable portal in front of that that makes it much simpler to say, hey, if you've got very specific use cases where you don't need the full complexity of Microsoft 365, and maybe the people that you're sharing with are not familiar with Microsoft 365 and they'd be overwhelmed with that, this is what this solution is all about. Whether it's data rooms, Power BI dashboards, we even have AI chat that could be powered by Copilot Studio or Azure AI Foundry. There's a full content management system, e-commerce integrations, enterprise integrations, lots of things you can do from that perspective. But we're going to focus primarily around the data room component of our product. And the idea is that they're permission controlled spaces. It's an easy spot to spin up a data room, and it's not typically just for a single document. It's usually for a set of documents. Maybe you're a law firm and this is your legal matter management where you're sharing externally. Perhaps you're a financial services and you're collecting financial documents. There's lots of different scenarios where this sort of structured sharing happens, and automation can be a big part of that as well. To say, hey, we want to integrate it in to HubSpot. We're going to show how we've done that with our organization. With SAP, we've done for clients. With Salesforce, it doesn't have to stay in the Microsoft ecosystem, but the key is that all the sharing stays within that. There's a rich member experience. There's rich compliance. All the Purview features that are wonderful from a compliance point of view are still there as part of the solution because it's all built on that 365 stack. So why don't I switch over and do a quick live demo here as part of this. I'm going to bring my browser up and flip over to our demo portal. So you can actually hit this site yourself, portal.eomdemo.com. You can enter your own email address. You can go through a self-registration process, and there's a whole test ride you can play around with. There's a number of different scenarios, but really the document sharing and collaboration is the primary one around the data room side of things. So there's things around committees, data rooms, loan applications, and such from there. So let's start. I'm not going to go through the registration. I'm going to use my corporate identity. So I'm in a separate eomdemo.com Microsoft 365 tenant, and I'm coming from the Envision IT. So I'm kind of the right hand of what Stephen was sharing on his screen before. I'm the external user in this scenario. So I'm going to log in. Now I've been using the system a fair bit, so I'm already a member of a lot of different groups. It'll make it a little easier for the demo point of view, but basically it's going through logging up microsoftonline.com. So even though you're in a branded portal, it's still using Entra ID B2B to manage the identity and the access and the security through here. And each of these cards represent a group in Entra ID. So let's start with a very simple one here. We'll do with the data room collaboration. This is probably the simplest example. And the idea is that we've invited in a number of people to a folder in SharePoint where they can upload, download, edit, collaborate on documents. And as I hover over a document like that, meeting minutes, you'll notice here, it's actually launching out into SharePoint.com. So I'm getting the full Word experience. I don't need to have Word as part of that, right through the data room as part of that. So we're leveraging all the benefits of keeping the content in Microsoft 365, but we're keeping a much simpler interface through here. I can upload additional documents if I've got new documents to add in there. I can download the entire package. I am an owner of this particular data room, so I can add new people in. So I could paste them in from Outlook, from Excel. I can just bang them in one at a time through there. So there's a lot of flexibility around managing who the members of this data room are. And you can put rules on here. We can have allow deny rules to say, hey, only people from Envision IT, because they're our client, can be added into this data room. I could even say, hey, let's make Eli the user manager for this particular group. And even though he doesn't work for Demo, he'd then be able to add people in himself. So you can actually delegate it not just to your own business, but even to the external organizations. A lot of our clients really like that delegated model as part of that. But let's keep going through the tour of data rooms here. We've got another one called Data Room Directory, and this is really a roll-up of different data rooms. So if I click into here, what it's showing me is that I belong to 2 different data rooms, and I can see the status on them, that this particular collection data room hasn't been started yet. There's 3 outstanding documents on it. It was created a while ago. I guess we're not moving pretty quick on that, and I can see who has access to this broader view here. So let's go ahead and click into that data room. This one's a little different than the one we just saw because it's got a few more cards on here. So it's got some metadata here about what this data room represents. So this one represents a loan application, and we've got a loan amount that's been applied to as part of this. So think of this as a way for a loans officer to collect financial documents from an external organization. And it might be multiple people coming from that external organization. Could be the CFO, the CEO, the external auditor, the accounting firm. They could all be added in as guests too here and collaborate on this. And there may be different pieces that each of them are providing as part of that. The next piece we see here is the requested documents. So this is actually configured for this data room to say, hey, these are the 3 types of documents that we need from this external group. And I'll show you in a minute where there actually gets that set up from there. So let's say I'm one of the external users. I want to upload some documents in here. I'm just going to go to my repository of sample documents. We'll throw some financial statements in there. Let's throw a balance sheet in there and go ahead and upload those. One of the tricky things when you're uploading into SharePoint, if you've got mandatory metadata as part of that, that can be a confusing thing if folks aren't familiar with SharePoint. So we've kept it very simple to say, hey, just tell me what each of these documents are, and I'll worry about tracking back to what that means from a metadata point of view behind the scenes. So now it's uploading them into SharePoint. Page will refresh in a second here. And we'll see that our status is now changed to in progress because we actually have some documents loaded up in here. In fact, the 2 types, the trial balance financial statement that we uploaded have come off this list because I've provided copies through there. I can tag multiple with the same. I can come back in and re-tag them or put some comments in if I've done something wrong from that point of view. And then ultimately, if I've got a P&L, I can upload that last piece through there. And if I come back to my data room directory for a second here, let's just refresh that page. We can see it's now showing in progress and only 1 document left from that point of view. So if I was the loans officer, I might have 10, 20, 50 of these open at any one particular time. I could, tag them by in progress to say, hey, which are the ones that are still in flight? Or if some of these were completed, I could look at those and say, okay, those are all ready for me to work on now. I've got everything from the client. We can move to the next stage of the application process through here. So you can start to build some very sophisticated workflows around this. And we have a plus here that lets me create a new data room, but maybe that's, tied into your loans application process. In fact, we've got an example of that here in this Contosa financial loan application, the idea being here that, when you fill out this application and apply, it actually creates a data room for you. This doesn't have to be in the portal here. It could be an external website. It could be an external application that's driving this as part of that. Okay. So let's come to a committee scenario. We do a lot of work with associations, and committees are a prime example where you've got a lot of document exchange happening, and often those committee members are external. And you might think, well, they've got a board of directors with 12 or 18 people on it. That's not that much collaboration. You get into a lot of associations, they tend to have a lot of subcommittees and working groups and expert panels. You can have thousands of people across those different groups, and managing all that can be a challenge. So basically, this is a different flavor of the same data room directory that I was just showing in the last example, tweaked to deal with meetings. And the idea is that we create effectively a data room for each meeting that we're going to be having through here. So I can use the plus and say, hey, we're going to have a new meeting. It's on this date and time. it's got this topic. It's going to be, in person, or maybe it's going to be hybrid at this location with this Teams meeting link. We've kept it fairly open, so you can create your own meetings and just paste the link in there. Maybe you don't want to use Teams, you want to use Zoom. That's fine. You can still integrate that in from that perspective. And we also have an area for some general documents here that aren't related to any one particular meeting. There might be a standard of conduct, or some broad overview around the committee itself that you want to provide from a general documentation point of view. So let's go into the demo meeting, for example, here. So just like that past example, we've got the details at the top here, drawing in from that meeting that was created. I can edit and edit that metadata to say, hey, I want to update the details around this particular meeting. I could upload documents, maybe in the board secretary, so I'm responsible for putting together the meeting package with all the briefing notes and supporting documentation and things like that. I can just load them all up in here. And then for the meeting attendees, I could send an email to all of them to say, hey, here's the meeting. I can send the calendar to them. I can have a link to this meeting room in the calendar link, so I can tie it all together and make it very easy for these folks to come in and get everything that they need from that point of view. And we actually use this for our own business. So when we're working with clients at Envision IT, we actually create client sites in SharePoint and channels and teams to manage our work with those clients. And here's an example of a Contoso client site. So this looks very similar to what a client of Envision IT would experience coming in. We may have some feature documents or links that we want to share with that client. But the key thing is, what projects are we working on for them? And you can see here we've got a number of different applications that are all integrated as part of this, not just from a 365 point of view with SharePoint, Teams, and OneNote, but we typically spin up an Azure DevOps project for this as well. So I can click on that link and go straight to the DevOps project, the sprint backlog, all the boards and repos and pipelines and everything related to that project is all available to me. We have financial reporting that I can get into in Power BI, or I can jump over into HubSpot to see. This is sort of our master data from a company point of view. So we use HubSpot as our CRM. We can see we've got the Contoso demo company in here with all of its details around its SharePoint site, its Teams, its OneNote. And we've got automation around building all of this out that pushes it down, not just into our product and into Microsoft 365, but into time tracking software, into QuickBooks from a financials point of view. It's all tied together. We're using a lot of Microsoft Fabric to integrate that from that perspective. And I have the same features to be able to invite clients in as part of that and bring them in here. And then I can drill down into individual projects. Again, it's that same data room concept. We're just repurposing it with a different flavor, some different details. This is showing me the details of that particular project and all the documents related to that project. If I hit the SharePoint link here, it'll bring me over to a broken spot. Bear with me a sec. It's supposed to go to demo. I think I mistyped something there. And under the hood, when we're adding people into the groups here, they're actually getting permissions in all the various different Microsoft 365 spots and Azure DevOps spots as part of that. So we use that Enter ID group to kind of manage everything from that point of view. And now I can see here's the SharePoint view of that demo project. It's all the same content. It's not like we're copying it into the portal. The portal is just providing a friendlier view into it from there. So if I prefer to work in here, or if I prefer to sync it to my OneDrive and get it through Windows Explorer, it's up to me as a user as how I want to experience it from that perspective. And we have a particular structure to how we map out our site, where we've got all of our agreements, invoices, quotes. From a financial point of view, we provide read access to the clients into here. We kind of hide this private documents. That's our spot to work on things like budgets and progress and things like that. But the projects area, we keep that wide open. We say, hey, even as clients, you get full contribute access in here, and we can co-author and collaborate on documents and specs and different things. It works really well for running our projects. Okay, where did we want to go from there? Actually, I have one more. We've got a number of client examples. I wanted to use this one as an interesting one. So let me just do a refresh here. So NBN Canada is Municipal Benchmarking Network Canada. They are a not-for-profit who whose members are large municipalities across Canada. And basically what they're doing is collecting service measures of how different cities are doing different things, and then bringing them all into a big data model, presenting it up in Power BI, and letting the municipalities compare to each other. Say, hey, who's doing well, who's not? How can we share knowledge back and forth from that point of view? So this is an example of an association with thousands of members, approaching 100 different expert panels and committees on there. A lot of collaboration going on and a lot of structured sharing. So we can see here, this is a demo municipality. These are all just made up people from this point of view. But basically, different folks would have access to different data entry Excels, and they would be collecting metrics from the municipality, which then get fed up into that data model and shared across the organization. So then different municipalities can come into the reporting, to the Power BI, access that, view those metrics, view the comparisons, and there's a whole set of expert panels for each of these areas as well, where they can do knowledge sharing across that. So those are some examples of different ways. They're all basically leveraging that data room concept, but you can see how they take on a very different flavor depending on the business and the scenario as part of that. And we've got the flexibility to be able to do that. So I've got a bunch of slides I'm going to skip past that basically go over those examples. If you're pulling the deck down later, you'll have that available to you. But I'm going to jump ahead to the Purview side of things. I know we're less than 15 minutes left, so I do want to take a little bit of time on this side here. So Purview is a big beast. Like, there's a lot of different components to Microsoft Purview. What we're focused on here is the information protection side of it. This idea of being able to apply labels and protect information based on those labels. And you can have auto labeling so that people don't need to label themselves. You can set up default labels. There's a lot you can configure as part of that. And part of that is around how external sharing works. So as Stephen showed us when he was trying to share that document with me and I was external, it had a Purview label that said this document can't be shared externally. So it was flagging him in the UI, which is a great thing to do. We don't surface a lot of the Purview stuff yet as part of our core product, but that's part of the backlog is to do the same things there, is to actually surface those labels up and make that very visible to say, hey, what level is this from that point of view? Purview has a much broader data security side to it around the data loss prevention, insider risk management, and investigation side, but it's really the information protection side that's the key thing that we were focused on. And I'm a big proponent of what's called the traffic light protocol for risk management. It comes out of the UK. It's a very simple green, amber, red, strict meaning internalize only, which was kind of Stephen's scenario there. So you can define policies. You can apply those policies either to workspaces or to individual documents, and then that constrains what can happen with that. And this actually ties right into the external sharing features in SharePoint, that if you've got, say, an amber strict label that says this can't be shared, and you apply that to the entire workspace or Microsoft 365 group, then sharing just can't happen. It doesn't matter, even as an admin, you can't go into the admin center and change that without removing that label. So it does provide a lot of control around that. And these are suggestions. If you're interested in going deeper, I'd encourage you to check out my other webinar. It talks about doing document encryption at the red sensitivity level, maybe just doing MFA from an amber point of view, and keeping it pretty open from a green or a clear sensitivity perspective. And really it all ties together. Purview, Hero Links, Extranet User Manager, they all contribute to the story of how you really leverage your Microsoft 365 from an external sharing perspective. So we can create and share, we can govern, showed you some of the tenant dashboard around that. You can certainly scale that as we get into data room scenarios, and definitely look at Purview from a protection point of view and locking that down from that perspective. So some of the best practices from a Purview implementation point of view, setting some default sensitivity labels for your workspaces, which says, if I put content in there, it's going to get that label. So if that has a red, highly sensitive, needs to be encrypted label on the workspace, any documents I put in there just automatically get that label and automatically get encrypted as part of that. MFA is a touchy thing from a guest point of view. A lot of folks feel multi-factor authentication, having to have an authenticator app as an example, is a must-have for everybody. But there are scenarios. If we go back to the the green sensitivity, there is sort of low sensitivity information, I like to think of a lot of training materials and things like that as good examples where you might not want to have MFA on it. Would you rather have a field worker not be able to get into training because they can't figure out the authenticator app and not get the safety training, or the risk is that somebody who isn't supposed to get it does, but the actual exposure risk is almost non-existent from that point of view. So you do have to balance that as you're thinking about that. And as we mentioned, with the sort of the broader message from Microsoft is going away from the anonymous links and moving towards named external users and having regular access reviews, making sure you clean up those stale links from that perspective. Stephen, I'm almost at the end here. Did you want to throw a couple of thoughts, feedback? We didn't really get a chance to bounce back and forth in this section.
No, I was going to say, like all of the guidance you've been providing is exactly how we think about it internally at Microsoft as well. And there are, variety of tools to let you figure out how to approach it, but the principles are the important part from our perspective of how you approach access governance, how do you balance security and usability. And like this list that you have here is very similar to what we would be presenting at a conference or wherever it might be.
Right. I think the key thing is to start with just acknowledging that Microsoft 365 is a great spot to do your sharing from, because it's going to happen somewhere, and that's a good choice. And a lot of people don't realize that. And then moving on from there to say, okay, how do we actually structure it properly so it is secure for our organization?
Yeah, absolutely.
So just coming back to sort of wrap up on the recommendation on the Purview side, looking at your team, your site sensitivity first, to understand what is the appropriate label there, and should there even be external sharing on this? There's lots of teams and sites that are internal eyes only. Putting a label like the one you were sharing, Stephen, can make a lot of sense to say, hey, nothing in here should actually get shared externally from that point of view. Pick the spots where you want the external sharing to happen. And understanding if you've got different sensitivity, can you split it up into different libraries? You have to be a little careful there. When you make your libraries lower sensitivity than your workspace, you get all these warning messages from Microsoft saying, hey, are you sure you have your stuff in the right spot? So there is some thought that needs to go into the information architecture to say, hey, have we structured this properly from that point of view? And if you have the E5, then use the classifiers. It can look for things like PCI credit information or PHI health information and auto-label it as part of that. Sorry, I should have tweaked the first statement there. So third generation sharing is almost here. We're close. We're 1 quarter away from that point of view. So looking forward to the hero links from that perspective. But pulling that all together, these are not exclusive approaches. There's certainly spots where I would continue to use hero links, where I'd be using data rooms, and certainly we're a fan of our tenant dashboard to understand how that's being used and maybe where you need to tidy it up, but also of leveraging Microsoft Purview as part of that unified solution. And most organizations we talk to, if they're invested in Microsoft 365, they tend to be all in. Like that's where their work is happening. Yes, we're still doing some file share migrations and some on-premise SharePoint server migrations, but they're the exception, not the norm. It is where the staff works. So why would you want to take them somewhere different? Have them do the external collaboration there as well. Set it up appropriately so it's secure, and it is a world-class solution from that point of view. Closing thoughts on your side, Stephen?
No, just that sharing collaboration are the heart of what we look at as the main job of OneDrive and SharePoint. Like we think of when you talk about it, is file sync and share. So we've got file storage, sync, not talking about today, but share is one of those core pillars. And HeroLinks is, I think, the biggest change to the sharing experience we've made in 10 years, certainly since the beginning of link sharing. And it really is the third generation in this massive OneDrive and SharePoint product. And so there's a lot coming down the line, and the feedback that all of you have given us, Peter, that you've given us directly via through Envision, through the Microsoft MVP program, have all been part of what has made this possible. And please keep sending the feedback our way, because we're not done yet. We've got more to do even after this.
Yeah, and that 1.2 billion files a month, that's a big number. There's definitely a lot of activity going on. I haven't been watching the Q&A. Kevin, is there specific questions that we want to circle back to?
Yeah, there was a question from Jim, and he just wanted us to confirm the timeline on the HeroLink rollout. And Stephen, he had an interesting thing where he said, like, he actually encountered it in his tenant last week, and then it disappeared.
Yeah, let me. So first, the official date for HeroLink's kind of rolling out. Roadmap, it was on the slide earlier, but is April 2026. So Q2 of next year is when we're expecting that to roll out. We have a message center post that I believe went out earlier this year when we announced the feature. We'll either update that or send out a new one as we get closer, so you have more specific dates as we get there. You did see it late last week for about 30 minutes, I believe, as we were expanding the experience internally as part of our normal run testing process. We ran into a fun bug that caused it to show up for everyone in the world for, like I said, 30 minutes, which made for a very fun experience. That was not intentional, but consider it a taste of what's to come.
It's a little beta test there. Yeah,
exactly. Just to see how things go.
Cool. Kevin, other questions there?
I think that was the only question that kind of came up.
Perfect. Want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us, and Stephen, thank you very much for taking the time out and joining into the discussion here. It's been great to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it, Peter.
Thanks, everyone.